excited that you joined us on a Friday night. We are the House of Hope Atlanta. Our senior pastor is Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr., where we believe that life with God is better in every way, every day. I want to start by thanking you, our online audience, our Hope TV family, for watching us every week. Some of you have been rocking with us since March, and we don't take it for granted. We want to say thank you and we love you. And if you haven't visited our website for Hope TV, visit us online on the World Wide Web at www.thehopetv.com. Our episode this week takes a look into the journey of managers who started at the bottom and worked their way all the way to the top. So if you are watching right now and you're a manager who started at the bottom, you started at the front desk, you started as the receptionist, and now you're the director, I want you to put in the comments, say, that's me, that's me. Many of us have the title of a boss, but do we have the mental headspace of a boss? Do we show up as a boss in our professional context? Let's talk about it. Our guests tonight are more than qualified to talk about what it means to start at the bottom and work your way to the top. Dr. D. Monique is with us tonight. She's a licensed professional counselor and psychotherapist with over 20 years. Listen to that. 20 years of experience in counseling and educational arenas. Dr. Jones has proudly served students and families in the Bibb County School District, my school district, all my Macon family. I want you to put a thumbs up in the comments. And she's employed by the Bibb County School District as a homeless and foster care liaison. She also holds a Doctor of Education degree from Argosy University. Join me in welcoming Dr. D. Monique to the Boss Up family. Say hello to everybody.
Hey!
We are so honored to have you with us. In addition to Dr. D. Monique, we have Michelle Lachey, your beauty BFF. She's been in the industry, the beauty industry, for over 13 years, and she's been a licensed esthetician for 8 of those 13 years. She also has her own skincare line made with natural ingredients and YouTube channel where she teaches makeup. She believes that every woman deserves to feel beautiful and to be the best them that they can be. Join me in welcoming the beautiful Michelle Lachey to Tabasa.
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
We're so honored to have both of you on Bossa. We like to get underneath the surface of who we are and have real conversations about our journey as business owners and professionals. So I want both of you, I want to start with you, Dr. D, with these lovely highlights. I want you to
Thank you.
talk to us tonight. I want you to talk to us tonight on Boss Up about your journey. How did you get into counseling? Because it takes a lot to carry the weight and the burden of other people's problems and other people's issues and help them work through all of that. How did you get into this?
Well, I mean, honestly, I always knew that I wanted to help people. And so growing up, I said I was going to be a doctor. That was my thing. Okay, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a doctor. And when I went to college, undergrad school, I went to the first nursing class and I was like, this is not for me. So I was like, okay, I had to pray about it. Okay, which way do I need to go? I still want to help people, but I found out that I could help people and become a doctor and do helping in a different way. So for me,
Yes.
I enrolled in psychology and a psychology course, and I was like, I found my tribe, and after that, it has been a ride, an amazing journey from there.
Amazing. Like we all need to find our tribe. And when you find your
Mhm.
tribe, it makes such a huge difference. So Michelle Lachey, jump in right there. How did you get into the beauty industry? I mean, being an esthetician, I know enough to know from hanging around at Ulta Beauty that there's a difference between a makeup artist and an esthetician, right?
Yes,
And so
yes.
I want to know how did you get into this? How did you get into your field?
Um, well, I actually initially I started my journey because I wanted to be a makeup artist. Um, I loved coloring. It was just something I just loved making things pretty. But my true pivotal moment was I've always suffered with hair growth on my face, and I remember going into a mall. I used to live in Chicago, so this was in the south suburbs of Chicago, and there was a like this bar, beauty bar, where they did waxing, and I scraped up my last $50 to get this face wax, and it still wasn't enough. But I'll never forget, the owner came out and she took me to the back and she took me to a private room and she just took her time with me. And she just, I don't, that day, I never felt more beautiful. And I knew at that moment that I had to do that for someone else. I had to, because she changed my life in that one moment. So yeah, after that, I went and pursued, like, okay, so how can I get into this? What do I need to do? So that was definitely that defining moment for me.
I love it. I mean, we talk a lot about on Boss Up how you need to know your why, and that whatever
Mm-hmm.
you do as your trade, whatever you do as your day to day job, it should make other people's lives better because that gives our work meaning. And so I
Mm-hmm.
love both of you and your trajectories and your journeys. I got
Thank
to
you.
pause right here because I don't want any other audience participants or persons who are watching us right now. I don't want them to miss it. Listen, if you're watching us right now, we want you to share, share, share. Share this video on all of your social media platforms. That's how you participate in the journey with us, because I know some other people who need to hear what these two dynamic ladies are going to talk about tonight. So, starting with you, Dr. D, if you could change something about this journey, your journey into all of this success and into all of your influence that you have, how would you change your journey? If you could change one thing about it, what would it be?
I think I wouldn't change anything. I would have a different conversation with myself. And so that conversation with myself, my earlier self, my younger self, is it's okay, relax. It's coming. Delayed doesn't mean denied. Take your time. Because early on, I felt like I had to get so much done, such a fast pace. And then I found myself stressed out and worried when things didn't fall together. So I wouldn't change anything. I would just change my self talk. Okay, girl, you got this. And I would affirm myself along the way and say, okay, this is where you're supposed to be here. This is where God wants you at this time doing this thing. So I would change the conversations that I had with a younger me.
I love it. I love it. So you would offer yourself some words of encouragement, some words of motivation. It's funny that you say that. On my Instagram page just this week in my story, I said, sis, show up and shock them all. Because your self
Yeah.
talk, what you say to yourself, it deeply impacts how you show up in the world and what you do. So I love that you shared that. We're going to come back to that. So, Michelle Lachey, I want you to tell us, if you could change anything about your journey, anything about all the success that you've amassed, how you got there, what would you change?
Um, I think the biggest thing I would change is learning how to, like you just said, just being myself more than anything. When I first started my career, it was like the path was what everyone else thought it should be and not what I thought it should be. The look was what everyone else thought it should be, not what I thought it should be. And the minute I started being authentic was with the
Yes,
minute the door started opening for me, when my authentic self started showing up. And so, yeah, if anything, I would just learn how to be more authentic earlier on and know that I'm okay with being me. And then, like you said, you found your tribe. My tribe will find me instead of trying to fit in with everyone else. So, yeah,
I
that's
love it.
definitely something.
I love it. You guys are dropping so much wisdom so early. Like, we're only 15 minutes in, and I feel like both of y'all just dropped the mic because your authenticity is your greatest asset. I tell people that all the
Yeah.
time. Through this whole national crisis we've been in and everything that's going on in our nation and our world, it is vitally important that we understand you are your only competition. You're
Yes.
not in competition with anybody else on social media. You're
Mhm.
not called to move how everybody else moves. God has a unique journey for you. And so we actually could shut the show down now, but I'm gonna continue with about three more questions just to make sure we get some of these. Um, our show tonight is really about transitioning from team member to manager and what it means to start at one place and end up in another place. It's often on the show we talk about different parts of my journey. People don't know this, but I'm an executive pastor at House of Hope. But I started out as an intern when I was in college in 2008, going to Emory keeping the files clean for the then executive pastor. So it's interesting to me how we can start in one place in an organization and God see fit to send us or to elevate us to another place. So starting with you, Dr. D, um, have you encountered any challenges moving from that space of servant leader, moving from that space of maybe working in one place and then now moving to where you give directives or you're the team lead? Have you encountered any challenges in that journey?
Yeah, and yes, of course. And the biggest challenge is the mindset. My mindset of going from working for someone to having someone work for you, or going from being you building somebody else's dreams to building your own dreams. And
Come
so
on.
I read on Instagram, I think that, if you don't build your own dreams, someone will hire you to build theirs. And that was just like that aha moment, like, that's correct. Like, really. So it's that mindset shift that now I don't work for someone, I work for myself. But I will say this, and I want people to really understand this. The way you are in another man's house, that's the way people will behave in your house. And so I'm paraphrasing scripture. So when I worked for
I like
someone else, when I was a therapist at somebody else's private practice, I grind just as hard as I do now being my own independent therapist and having my own company, because the grind doesn't change because the location changes. So my work ethic, because that's the only way I could establish clientele, keep clientele, get referrals. So I'm the same therapist you got when I worked at somebody else's. The only difference is the office name has changed, but the therapist that you get, the quality of work that you get, it doesn't change. So that was the other thing, just making sure that I was humble where I was, honored where I was, and where God had me, knowing that I didn't have to despise my small beginnings because I knew my end would be great. So that's one, piece of advice that I would give in.
I love it. Michelle, jump in right there. But I want you to talk a little bit about how our organizations look like us. Because I'm a manager as well in my context, and your work ethic shows up in your team. So
Absolutely.
Michelle, talk to me about that. Do you believe that what Dr. D said is true? That your organization
Absolutely.
will look, I want to ask you a different question. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with 100% of everything that she said. It's definitely a mindset shift. You do have to grind hard. I actually see that I work harder for me than I did for someone else. But
Mm,
also with the mindset thing, sometimes I found myself, especially in the very, very beginning, um, looking at, like, I get paid for a service. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna put this money in my pocket and I'm just gonna go. And it's like, wait a minute, that's not how it goes. This is your business. You have to take that, put it back in your business. You have to learn how to reinvest into yourself. This isn't just I go in, I do something, and I go home. This is, you take it home with you, you sleep with it, you eat breakfast with it. This is your life. I am my business, I am my brand. I go to sleep as my business, I wake up with my business, I eat lunch as my business. And I that whole mindset shift of that there is no clock in clock out. Every day, 24/7, I'm my business. So that is the biggest mind shift for me. And I have to constantly remind myself of that. Like, this is yours, not anyone else's. This is yours. And you have to make sure you treat it as such. Respect it,
so there,
honor it.
yeah. So I hear you saying there's a different level of ownership, right?
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah, different level of
Absolutely.
ownership. I've been saying that about team building for years, that a lot of our teams are disengaged in the work because they don't
Mm-hmm.
they don't take ownership. We haven't given, and in some cases as managers, we haven't given them ownership of the work so that they then own the results, right? So Dr.
Mm-hmm.
D, with that in mind, do you think that team members or teammates make great bosses? In general, do you think that that's a good model? Or do you think sometimes it's better to recruit from outside and find somebody who doesn't know anybody, who is just coming in with a set of skills and a work ethic of their own? Do you think teammates make better bosses, or outsourcing is better? Tell us what you think.
I think teammates make better bosses because starting your own company, I'm my first team member. I'm the manager and I'm the team member. So what I had to do was build my company as a boss and as an employee. So I had to ask myself, moving along in different phases, what would I need to know as an employee at this phase? Because I think sometimes people spend so much time becoming the boss that they don't understand at some point you're going to have employees. So what will they
Say
do?
that.
How will they know the process? And so I built a two ply platform pretty much. So I'm building as a boss, but then I'm an employee of my own company. So even though it was
Stop.
just me, I still had
Stop.
an
You gotta stop. We gotta capture that. Keep your thought because I want somebody to put that in the comments. You gotta build like a boss, but work like a teammate. All right, keep going, keep going, keep going. I gotta say,
So when it
you
was
said
just
or
me, I still had an employee. Yeah, I still had an employee handbook, and I was the only person that worked for my own company. I was the employee. But you prepare as a boss for when you do have employees. So what would I need to know at the beginning? How do I set appointments? How do I set enough time in between appointments? Because remember, I'm the boss, but I'm still the therapist because I'm a company of one. So I'm setting my own appointments and I'm seeing these same clients. So when I hire a receptionist, this is the way this should be done and this is how it should be done this way. So mapping out every step of the process. So you work like a boss, own like a boss, build like a boss, but work like an employee. And that's just kind of been my strategy.
you've said something so major. Because I can even look at my journey, Michelle. I'm pretty sure you can identify with this. Working in the office of a church, you were able, for me, I was able to hear the concerns of people. I was able to see how the organization worked, how you have explicit leaders and you have implicit leaders come on. And so I was able to learn
Mm-hmm.
so much about that. So that once God saw fit to put me in a position to lead, I now know the culture. I know how the
Absolutely.
organization works, and I'm able to think in a way that serves not only those who are in executive leadership, but the person who's at the front desk. I know how to think about the organization as a whole. So, D. Monique, I need somebody to put in the comments. She said something right then. She said something.
Mhm.
She said, Michelle,
Yes.
jump in right there. Jump in right there. Do you think that teammates make better bosses? Or have you had an experience where outsourcing the position, where finding somebody from outside of the organization worked better? Tell us what you think.
Um, I think it all depends. I think both are good avenues, in the sense of depending on what it is that you want from someone. Um, but like Dr. Demonique was saying, if you have a certain teammate that knows exactly how the company goes and how things go and how they build, you pull from them. I've been that person where, I used to work for Chase and in a lockbox, and I went from just the regular employee to like a backup team lead and to like the team lead roles. And you know, I probably would have been offended if they pulled someone in, who hadn't been
Yeah.
there, and it's like, what are you talking about? I know this. But then if you have something where you as a boss, you should be able to look at your employees and understand what their strengths are, understand what their weaknesses are. And if you don't have someone that you feel like that can advance your company to where you need it to be within your teammates, I feel like it's by all means, you have to do what's best for your company. You can't spare anyone's feelings, you know, um, when it comes to advancing what it is that you have going on. But even as myself too, like, I do go back and I even look at old things, which is crazy. I worked at Ulta for like 2 years,
Okay.
and I had a handbook that they give you when you first uh, get hired. I promise you, I never opened it up. I never was like, what? Like, didn't take any responsibility for my accountability and what I needed to do in that organization. But as soon as I started my business, one of the first things I did was open that book and take that map and that road of what it is that they said, because they had a good guideline for me. And I took those guidelines and I took those things and I took what I needed from it and implemented it in my space. And then once I grow and once I do get bigger and I, do get to a certain point and I do bring more people on underneath me, I want to be able to take those things that I've learned from other people and then, like I say, pass it on to someone else to create a good team. And then you create loyalty too with knowledge. If you give someone a lot of knowledge and make them accountable, a lot of times that creates a lot of loyalty too as well. So I do believe that teammates can become great managers, but sometimes you do have to find someone from the outside that has a different opinion. They're less emotionally involved in the situation and they can look at it more logically for you. But yeah, definitely, I do think you need to start within though, more than anything. Look within first, even within yourself. Look within and then see what you can elevate within before you start bringing in outside sources.
That's
I agree.
good.
Yeah.
Good.
And
Yeah,
just kind of
Dr. D.
to piggyback from what she said, one thing that I think too is very beneficial is, and this is just my personal thing, I don't want employees working for me. I want
Mm,
bosses in training.
absolutely.
So if
Absolutely.
to me, my ultimate goal is to be able to replicate what I know. And so I want people that can work for me that I can help work for themselves. So I want to help
Mm,
people work themselves out of a job, work themselves
mm-hmm,
out of working for me. So when I learn how to do insurance and billing and credentialing, I want to teach
mm,
you how to do that. I tell people all the time, you can teach the work, but you can't teach loyalty. So if you get
absolutely.
someone that's loyal to you and loyal to the business, I can teach you how to do the job because I know how to do the job, but I can't teach you
Absolutely.
loyalty to a company. So I want to position people to be able to open up their own practices and not just always work for me, because it's that mindset that a true boss does not always want employees. They want to be able to look and say, you know what? I help her start that. Okay, yeah, I help you do that. So that's the
Mm-hmm,
pride that comes when your kids can move out of your house and still, it's
mm-hmm,
kind of like being a pastor. My mom's a pastor. When your kids leave your house, I said all the time, I said, I don't want to be a minister. My mama a pastor. That's good. God, you did good with that one. And now my twin sister, my brother and I are all ministers. It does mom's heart good because it's not so much that she had a love for God and still does have a love for God, but now to see her kids have that same love, that same passion, that same dedication, and now we're all serving ministries in that same capacity. That's when you know you really bossed up.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
That's when
Yes.
you know you're bossed up, when you are able to
Absolutely.
create other bosses. That is so major. I want to
Mm-hmm.
stop right here because we're almost done. Whenever bossed up comes to a close, I'm never ready because our guests are so amazing. So I want to pause right here. If you're watching us right now, we want you to share this video on all of your social media platforms so that other bosses can get some of this great information that we're sharing, these nuggets of encouragement, but then also just some practical business ethics advice, right? So I want to pivot. I want to pivot to you, Dr. D. You were just talking. I want to come back to you. Um, if you could talk to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell her? Both of you in your journeys were employees that started your own businesses and became bosses, right? So I want to start with you, Dr. D. What would you tell your 20-year-old self, knowing what you know now as a boss?
I would tell my 20-year-old self, every experience treat it like a piece of fish. Eat the meat and throw away the bone. Because a lot
Come
of
on.
times I had experiences and I didn't know, girl, just because I didn't like that supervisor, it was still meat there. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that at 20. So if I didn't like somebody, especially being 20, I'll quit a job. I ain't gonna stay here. They ain't gonna talk to me any kind of way. Well, when you become a boss, people still will talk to you any kind of way. So I would tell my 20-year-old self, every experience, learn from it. Eat the meat and throw away the bone, because I promise you, it's something valuable in every experience.
Absolutely.
Dynamic, dynamic. Come on, come on. I see you already getting ready. Michelle, just jump in right
Yeah. So, if what I would tell my 20-year-old self, um, more than anything, it's okay to go hard for you.
Oh,
Because I
wow.
used to go hard for everyone else because, I not to make this a long story, but you know, when you're younger, people are like, oh, don't do that. The beauty industry, that ain't no real job, you know. And I would go so hard for everybody else to prove that I was such a hard worker or anything like that, and but didn't go hard for myself. So more than anything, I would tell people it's okay to go hard for yourself. It's okay to be selfish. It's okay to again just be yourself, be authentic, show up for you. Um, More than anything, yeah, be yourself. Be yourself
I love
more than anything.
I love it. I love it. You know, I did spend a little time in secular work in corporate, and I agree with you all. Sometimes you got to go hard for yourself. You know, it was until
Mhm.
I branched out on my own and started my own kind of ministry branding and started doing my own consulting and my own seminars and teaching. It was until that happened for me that I realized, you know, you've been building a lot of stuff for other people. It's okay to build for you, right?
Mhm.
So, Dr. D, I'm going to come back to you. What advice do you have for that young business owner who's watching, or excuse me, that young employee who's watching and saying, I want to be like Dr. D. I want to have my own. What piece of advice would you want them to have tonight?
The change your mindset. Just because you're an employee now, function like a boss. You know, David was anointed when he was in the field, but that didn't make him any less of a king. So my thing is, while you're an employee, go ahead and get you some professional headshots done. Go ahead and start working on your website. Start getting your price list together. Start mapping out corporate engagements and corporate speaking events. When I write a book, this is how much I'm going to charge for. Go ahead and start functioning as your own boss, even though you're working as an employee, because delayed does not mean denied. You're a queen in the making. You just may be in the field right now, but God still has that position for
I'm not going to add anything to that. I'm not going to add anything. I'm going to let Michelle, what would you
Yeah.
tell that employee who's saying, you know what, I want to be on my own. I do makeup, I do hair. I want to be on my own like Michelle Lachey. What would you tell
Yeah.
them?
I would tell them first and foremost, like Dr. Moni said, delay does not mean denied. Start the steps in the process of what it is that you need to do. Like I said, get headshots, get prices. Don't shortchange yourself. By all means, know your worth. Know that you're worth more than, you know, don't back down on your convictions, and don't back down on your beliefs that you can do this. Um, don't focus so much on what the next person is doing. Focus on you. If you have tunnel vision about what you have to do, about what your vision is, and you, all the noise of everyone else will dissipate. Like seriously, you have to just know that you can do it. Know that there's room for you more than anything, especially in the beauty industry. We be like, it's so congested. And then being in Atlanta, coming from Chicago to Atlanta, it's like, oh my God, it's so saturated. And I'm like, it may be saturated, but there's still room for me. There's millions and
Yes.
millions of people in this world. You will find your place. Don't give up. Please don't give up. Whatever you do, pray about it, meditate about it, but don't give up.
You need to put
That's it.
that. We put that in the comments. Listen, if you're watching and you just heard Michelle Lachey, I need you to put in the comments. Listen, there may be millions of people in the world. The market may be saturated, but there's only one you. That's
Mm-hmm.
good. We can actually end on that. So I'm going to go back to you, Dr. D. If I'm in the Bibb County area or greater Atlanta area and I need some counseling services, how do I get in contact with you? I say it every time people ask me, what do you need to be successful and to win in this season? I'm all about winning. We can win in a pandemic, we can win in the final quarter of the year. So when we talk about what I need to win, I always say this: you need a pastor and you need a therapist. So I want to
it.
ask you,
Exactly.
I want to ask you, Dr. D, how can we find you if we need to patronize your services?
You can find me on all social media platforms at Dr. D Monique. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. reach out to me. I'll get back in touch with you. And even if you don't want to use my service, I can link you with someone else, because at the end of the day, like you said, you need Jesus and a therapist.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes. Michelle, I'm already trying to think of how I'm gonna get in to see you because I got some things I couldn't handle in the pandemic that I need to
That's fine.
address. A lot of us haven't had our eyebrows done. We've been painting them
Hmm.
on. So,
Jesus.
so I
I
may
know
have to
that's the
come.
fortunate thing. I can do
Yes.
it
How
myself.
do we?
That's fortunate.
You can do it yourself. See, it's
Yeah.
not fair. It's not fair. But how do we reach you? How do
Not there.
we, if we need to
Um,
utilize your services?
I can be found. Well, I have a website, MichelleLachey.com, just like how it's spelled. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, Michelle Lachey. On Facebook, Michelle Lachey Beauty and Brow Bar. Um, yeah. So, but if you go to my website, there's links to everything. There's links to my YouTube. My YouTube is Michelle Lachey. So everything is my name. So if you know how to spell it, you can find me.
So I've really enjoyed talking with both of you and just hearing about your journey. This is the Boss Up Show. We are the House of Hope Atlanta. Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr. is our pastor. And as our pastor often says, if you are good to God, God will be good to you. Family, I hope you have an amazing weekend. And if you're not ready to boss up after this episode, I don't know. See you next week.
Washington is working really well for the folks who are well connected. But for people in the communities that I serve and people sitting around their kitchen table right now, I don't think it's working well. I still believe in the American dream, but there's a disconnect between the American people and what we're getting in Washington. We're seeing how this is working, and so I would challenge the people of Georgia to try something different. I'm Raphael Warnock, and I approve this message.
You know, you've been building a lot of stuff for other people. It's okay to build for you.
Be authentic. Show up for you. Be yourself.
Go ahead and start functioning as your own boss, even though you're working as an employee, because delayed does not mean denied.
Like you said, a lot of people think that you just wake up and say, oh, this is what I'm going to be and this is what I am, and that everything happens overnight, and that is absolutely untrue. Do you have a few friends who's in jail right now? Do you have a few friends who's in trouble right now? I said those judges and all of that stuff really, really matters. The congressmen, all those people matter. So you have to make sure that you pay attention to those things and the numbers of what you're voting for.